What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down Matt Miller's way too early 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. Below my face is my board. There's some spoilers for the defensive back video that's going to be coming up, which highlights safeties as well as slot corners. You guys get to have a little sneak peek at some of those already on your screen, so super excited for that. We'll be talking about them in this as well, but if you guys want to see the deeper breakdown, that is going to be later this week, probably early next week. I like to do scouting while I'm also doing work. It is what it is, but it's the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. I just don't really fit within the little screen right there. I could have adjusted that, but, who gives a damn? I could just show the flag for 1 second, and then at least you guys know I'm not wearing a wife beater, just to wear a wife beater, or the proper nomenclature, wife pleaser. But below my board is going to be all the great links to be able to get involved with the community. I have a link tree in my description that makes it all easy for you. It's on the phone, it's on the computer. You get to go through all the codes I have that are, able to give you guys special discounts. Like when you go to my beautiful sponsor, UnderDog Fantasy, you get to be able to get up to $250 for free on your first deposit, 50% match. Do it legally, responsibly, but it does send me a $60 check every time you do that. So I do appreciate it anyways, especially in the off season. But at the end of the day, they actually treat me really well. That's why I like to promote them. They don't require me to promote them at all. It's a brand that I actually give a crap about. So this video probably isn't going to be up in time, but from 12 to 2 p.m. today, EST, they have a special on Manny Machado having basically higher than half a plate appearance. I'm not an MLB guy, but they have stuff like that as well. They even do stuff for MMA, PGA, all types of cool stuff. But let's get right into this. Let's have a good time. I got to meet Matt Miller a couple times there in Mobile, and meet as in actually talk to. I know there's some people say, oh, I met the guy, and it's pretty much a handshake. But, got to meet him, talk to him in the bar. Is probably because I was just talking to Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed's the coolest guy I've ever met, probably. Just genuinely a dude who's just there to hang out and be genuine. But that's not a conversation we need to have right now. But Matt Miller, some people have talked down about him that I've talked to, but for me, I've just never had a bad experience with the guy. He's just a cool dude who actually remembered who I was even after the first interaction I had with him, which when you're at a bar doesn't always happen, but treated me really, really respectfully. Chill dude. Let's get right into this though. It's a guy who I have a lot of respect for, even though some people want to drag his name through the mud. I'm not going to do that. He is a good guy. From all the experiences I've had with him, and at the end of the day, that's all I really care about, how you treat me, and then honestly, what I end up seeing with your overall picks, which overall I actually think Matt Miller's done a really, really good job. So projected trade, New York trades up to 1. Apparently the Patriots are going to be the team with the number 1 pick. Very excited to see. I probably could have read it in here. It's probably my fault, but essentially, this is going to be a projected draft order, I assume. Anyways, we're going to have a move up here with the Giants to number 1 overall to select Carson Beck. I did just drop my New York Giants deep dive last night at 11 o'clock because I promised a video every day. What am I doing to myself? But, ended up going over that and ended up doing a records prediction. And I did not have the Giants being a team that I think was pushing the number 1 overall pick, but they're definitely going to be in the top 5. But it's a good team. The problem is, I keep bringing this up, it's not that these teams are getting worse. It's just a lot of the teams in the NFL, in my opinion, are getting better faster. So comparatively, you're not keeping up. Think about inflation. It's something that we all deal with. You might get a 1% raise and say, hey, I got more money than I did last year. But if the inflation rate's 5%, well, we all know it's a little bit higher than that sometimes, then it's not like you're actually getting richer. You're effectively getting buying power poor. We don't need to talk about economics in this, though. We're talking about the Giants. And, they're a team that's gotten better. I do think there's some holes on their roster for sure. Again, check out that deep dive for that. But Carson Beck fits the system perfectly. To me, he's a better version of Kenny Pickett. As a Steelers fan, I think I'm pretty, aware of what Kenny Pickett has done. I'm going to adjust my camera again. You guys don't need to see the flag anymore. I got proof that it's not just a random wife beater. But Carson Beck, to me, has that mobility. He has the ability to throw on the run. I think he's basically, could fit this offense to a T. Big fan of what the New York Giants could do with him. However, that's a lot of draft capital to move up for a guy who I don't know would be a significant upgrade over Daniel Jones. if the goal of the NFL is to win a lot of games, but not win maybe the ones that matter, Carson Beck might be the guy that could give you, maybe that notch above, that little line between loss and a win. He might give you that little wins above replacement boost to get you to win more games, right? But when it comes to the teams where that bar is significantly raised because they're significantly more talented, I don't know yet if I believe Carson to be on that level. But Carson Beck, still a very talented quarterback. He is, I believe, my number 3 quarterback in the class. The Giants, it's a perfect system fit. Then we also have the Raiders jumping up for a quarterback here, and Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, I think, is my QB4 or 5. He's a talented quarterback. I don't think he has a very, very strong arm. It's not a lively arm by any means. If anybody wants to tell you he has like a super cannon for an arm, I'm not one to say don't listen to them, because, I mean, we've all made our mistakes, and sometimes, like, we want to believe things and see things that we want to believe, but he doesn't have that. He does have more anticipatory throws on average than any other quarterback. That's not a statistical feature. It's just when I watch, he actually throws with the proper timing, and I do appreciate that. That's a little intricacy to the game that not many quarterbacks have anymore. At the same time, he probably had to throw with more anticipation because his offensive line was absolute butt cheeks. Again, that being said, not an elite athlete, not an elite arm. To me, those are 2 of the foundational pieces for a ceiling for a quarterback. And, you already have guys with really solid floors here, and Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo. So for me, I don't really think that would be a massive upgrade, especially, once again, for moving up and basically using draft capital that you could use elsewhere. So I think I'd give Aiden O'Connell another shot. Then we got the Broncos going Will Johnson, the best player in the class. I watched the Michigan DBs, which, they won't be featured on my board. Maybe they'll be featured in this draft because this is a live reaction. But I kept being like, oh, wow, I really love that new safety that just popped up. And it turned out that Will Johnson was just moving around the field. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, when you start falling in love with a player, not knowing you're watching said player, that's when you know it's genuine. Like, you aren't tricking yourself into overanalyzing. It's just genuinely from the heart. You're like, holy crap. This guy, I think he is the best player I've ever watched. Like, I've been officially grading guys for only a few years now, but, I mean, it is just jaw-dropping, his ability. And people say, oh, cornerback at 1 is stupid. I mean, I have a cornerback at 1 and 2, so, like, you can definitely go to town on me for that one, but regardless, also, you guys see that Dylan Gabriel and Jalen Daniels are here in my top 15. I'm going to be adjusting that because I asked for some feedback on this. I got one person to respond on it, so more people, feel free to. I'm thinking about adding a -5 for all quarterbacks 6 foot and under. I do think that it is a challenge being a quarterback at a certain height for you to be drafted as such. Like, I do think that there needs to be a legitimate, frame hit. And I've already gotten -3 on that, but that's for other reasons as well. So I do think that I'm going to be implementing the -5 there, which will be dropping them significantly. Regardless, at number 4, the Titans go James Pierce. I do think that another edge rusher is not a bad idea, but I have seen Arden Key in the offseason working on his hand technique, and it looks phenomenal. I hope that it can translate to the game, but I think James Pierce adding to that rotation wouldn't be a bad idea. To me right now, he's at 30 overall on my board. That sounds awful, but again, you guys got to realize that this is primarily what I see them as right now, and I use this as almost a reference to be able to watch how they grow and develop over the season. Because if someone is at 10 and randomly when I regrade them, they're down at 30, to me, I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not going to be a massive advocate of taking him maybe higher than what he should. Now, if I see someone like James Pierce, who is right here at 30 on my board, I'll move it right there so you guys get to see that. So spoiler alert, there's a couple safeties more that you just saw in that group. But like, for me, if you're at 30 and then I see you improve up to 15 and you get taken in the top 5, it's like, you know what? I think that you can continue improving at this rate. I love seeing progression. And James Pierce, he needs to get that polish. He's doing spin moves into the chest of offensive tackles, right? Like, you got to be able to, the timing, the angles, like all of that, you need to continue working on over and over and over again and refining your game until it's actually applicable to the NFL. Like, you can win in college being very raw and being just a very good athlete, and James Pierce has done that very, very well. but I want him to show a little bit more polish, and that's why he's just on the verge of being a fringe starter to a starter. In Tennessee with Arden Key there and Harold Landry, that is the perfect location for him to truly develop. And then, of course, it is Tennessee as well. At pick number 5, the Commanders go Kelvin Banks. He's 6'4". He might end up being an offensive line transfer, going back to guard, but I do really like what he brings to the game. He's very ferocious. His hand placement's just awful. I saw so many punches that he landed that went almost to the face. And that's a lot of flags. And when it wasn't to the face, it was to the outside of the shoulder pads. It's going to be a lot of holding calls. There's a lot that he needs to improve on, but he has a really, really strong base. And he's someone who I do trust to develop. Like, he's one of those guys where I'm going to be more optimistic, even though he's going to be a little bit lower on my board. I think he's right in like my top 50 to 60 range. I can't even see his name right at the moment, but I can guarantee you he's in that range. Like, I think that's a comfortable range I have him in, and I think he'll end up being top 32. Like, I do have optimism on his development. So for him being in the top 5, I don't know if I'm there yet, because there's still a lot to his game that is not NFL ready, but he is a very talented player. He's honestly someone, especially since he is an undergrad, could end up seeing him go back for one more year and try to make that final push. Then the Patriots go Will Campbell. I mean, if Michael Onwenu wants to be the guard and you want to put Caden Wallace to right tackle, deep down, I would put Caden Wallace to right guard and keep Onwenu at right tackle, but keep that between us. But if you want to do that, Will Campbell, perfectly fine. I do worry. He has 33-inch arms. It does pop up sometimes, but he was able to handle guys with 34-plus-inch arms. That's not named Dallas Turner, like a la Darius Robinson. So I do think he has it in him to be a left tackle. I don't know if it's confirmed, but he at least shows it. Weird form as well, but it does seem to work for him. It's one of those times where you'll see it and it's like, I'm not going to be showing you to kids who are learning their mechanics, but it works for you. Do your thing. So there's some certain exceptions to every single rule. Will Campbell's a very talented player. If he goes at number 6, that's perfectly fine. I do think that this would be a pick I'd go for Nick Scourton. I got some pushback from Patriots fans because Judon should be re-signed. Judon literally said, I don't know about that, because someone tweeted it out. I just don't think that they're going to because of that. Unfortunately, it sucks because he's been a crucial part of that defense. But, if they're not going to re-sign him, they're not going to re-sign him. That's going to be a great vacancy for Nick Scourton to come in and join. But Will Campbell, far from a shabby selection. Vikings go Mason Graham. Pretty sure I did this in my most recent mock draft. Feel free to check that out as well. It was literally this week, so it's not like it's outdated or anything. But Mason Graham, he's a great defensive interior to pair up with the pass rushing upside of Dallas Turner. I do think Mason Graham is a little bit more one-dimensional than what people want to say. He gets off blocks better than arguably anybody that I've studied on defensive interior, which is great. But I do think that, unblockability versus effectiveness, like, they usually work hand in hand, but there are certain instances, and I think this is one of them, where it doesn't always end up working together. I think he can get off blocks well, but I also think that he does sometimes take himself out of the play. He doesn't always go through the offensive lineman, but there are reps where he does. But that's why he's my defensive interior 1, but I do think he needs a lot more polish. And I had some really good defensive interiors last year. So keep that in mind as well. It's not like, I definitely have a type, and it is more explosive block shedding defensive interiors. Mason Graham pretty much fits that, and I still am a little bit reserved on my love for him at the moment. Panthers go Luther Burden. I'm actually going to be restudying the entire wide receiver class, even after I restudied the entire receiver class, when I do my deep dives, which after this DB video, then we're going back to the deep dives, or I did it for quarterback. I have a couple more guys I want to study there, but I'm not going to remake an entire video just to add 5 guys to an already top 25. Doesn't really make much sense, does it? But Luther Burden, he's just somebody, I say he's the talent Deontay Johnson. I love him. But I do think he doesn't always apply himself to every rep that I do think he should apply himself to. Now, there's certain guys that I love their motor. They'll run 100% of the time, 100% of the time, right? They'll run 100%, 100% of the time. But there are certain guys where they'll reserve themselves on reps that they're effectively not going to even be effective on, right? And I think that's, it's not ideal, but I understand trying to keep the gas in the tank when it actually matters. I do think that you should try to keep your cornerbacks on their toes, like maybe go 70 or 80% on those reps. But Luther likes to go about 50%. And again, it's debatable, but it's on some of these certain reps. And there was one in particular I posted on my X account, and feel free to follow me there. It's where I post my all 22 clips that I always like to talk about too. It makes it easy to reference for my memory, especially when I have it up there and I can always look back. But Luther Burden, basically he was running pretty much a deep post, right? And Harold Perkins lurked the hell out of it and got an interception on that play. So it's pretty easy to find as well, even if you want to look it up. But Luther was running at 50, 60% on that play when he was a primary read. I don't know if that was a timing thing. Again, that's something where I'm still trying to develop that, but I doubt that a primary read, like something like a deep route, would be something that you want to run at a slower pace. Like, it just doesn't seem to make very much sense. But I have seen a lot of his maneuverability on the field, and it is awesome. It is. So, Luther Burden is someone who I want to give a little bit more of a second shake to. I will say for the Panthers, I don't know if I fully see the vision for Luther Burden on this squad because you already have Deontay Johnson, right? You already have Mingo there. Like, there's just a lot of roles on the Panthers that I think you need to give the receivers there more shots to develop into. Xavier Leggett as well. Forgot about that too. Like, you already have a killer trio. I would not be spending the 8th overall pick on that. Your corner core needs a lot of help. You have Ben Morrison here. I think your edge rushing crew could use some extra juice. You have Nick Scourton here. You don't need to go for the offensive line because you already pretty much invested a ton of money into that. So I think that the smart thing to do would be to go after one of those top corners or an edge rusher here. That being said, if you don't want to keep Deontay Johnson long-term, Luther Burden is that guy to perfectly replace him. Pick number 9, we got the Cardinals going Travis Hunter. I will be grading him as a receiver. I'm going to elect to do that as well. But I thought Travis, people think I crap on Travis Hunter here. Where is he at on my board? He's 20. Like, that's not crapping on somebody when I'm just falling in love with a lot of other players. I think he is a little bit more specific to a zone-heavy system because he's very smart in space. And I think a lot of high school quarterbacks don't really thrive versus corners that have good instincts in zone. And that's why he was the number 1 player in the nation. And I think that's why he's had a lot of success so far with a lot of these crazy interceptions, is because he processes the field so well. But I do think he is a little bit lackluster on certain plays where it counts. Again, this is a guy who plays 100 reps a game. So I respect when you don't go 100% of the time because you need that gas to go the whole game. But there's always a rep in particular that will always sit with me when I do have an issue with players' motor. And it was this play versus Tetraronic McMillan on the goal line. And basically, it was a fade route, and T-Mac just went up and got it. Of course he did. That's what T-Mac does best. But Travis didn't even contest the ball, and I could tell he knew it was coming. I don't want a corner that has a defeatist mindset when the play matters the most. Now, I'm not knocking him for saying that's a huge red flag. I'm just saying there is something to be considered there. But Travis Hunter does have that elite instincts on the field. I do think that he could be a good asset for Gannon, but I just don't know if I would be investing in it at 9 because there's a lot of really, really good corners in this class. So, it's up in the air. I don't have Travis high enough to justify it, but I don't blame a team if they do. Pick 10, you got the Saints going Quinn Ewers. Quinn is just going to be one of those guys who I'm not going to be fully sold on. I'm planning on going to UT for grad school, so I will be a little bit biased for any form of Texas players deep down. But regardless, Quinn has a very inconsistent deep ball. I think that he is very rhythmic, but in the NFL, you need to be positive rhythmic where you're usually on point, and then maybe you'll get yourself off every now and again. Quinn is usually a little bit off, and then he'll hit rhythm, and I love that, the fact that he can get in rhythm, but it's just not consistent enough for me. I do think the Saints should be looking for a new quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler would have graded out arguably better than Quinn Ewers for me. So I'd probably be giving Spencer a little bit more of a shake. And I think the Saints have enough potential issues with Cam Jordan getting older. And, the offensive line still is not looking too hot. There's a lot of really good targets that you could still go after at this point to where I'd feel comfortable for him over going after a quarterback. The Seahawks then go T-Mac, Tetairoa McMillan. I think that, if you don't want to keep DK, he does fill a role that, I guess, DK, because he hasn't been the elite route runner, even though he toasted the hell out of Deron Bland, T-Mac could be that guy. And I will be restudying T-Mac again. He's one of those guys who I just cannot be sold on. And I wanted to. Of all the people, you guys know I'm a sucker for Arizona players for some reason. Just T-Mac's not that guy for me. I think he's very, very one-dimensional. And I'm not a fan of one-dimensional. Even though, I was a big fan of Keon Coleman. So you could say I'm a fan of one-dimensional. I just am not with Tetairoa. But if you do want him to replace DK Metcalf, there is going to be a role in that offense for him to fill. Just not at pick 11 for me. Tampa Bay Buccaneers then go Harold Perkins. He is an edge rusher. He's just really good in coverage, essentially. He's an edge rusher that can cover. That's probably why they put him at linebacker, because he's also undersized and can cover. So I guess it's a little bit easier for him to be in that spot. That being said, Harold Perkins does bring a ton of upside, and I complained about this in my Buccaneers deep dive, so that's already up on the channel. But this team needs an edge one. Like, I am a fan of Chris Braswell as a contributory edge rusher, an edge 2 at best. I think Harold Perkins has that edge 1 potential, right? I already have him great as a starter. You can see where he is on my board. This is a really, really good pick, and I just pray that he ends up adding that extra mass. And I hope that, he's played so far really well at that size. It's just a little different when you have a Trent Williams coming at you at full speed. Will you be able to hold up at 220? I don't think so. Pick 13, the Steelers go Ben Morrison, my number 2 player in the class for my favorite team. I ain't going to complain. We do need a corner number 2 because Dante is going to be up for a contract, if I'm not mistaken. And, I want somebody next to my boy JPJ. JPJ was my number 2 player in that class. Ben Morrison is my number 2 player in this class. It'll be pretty damn sick to have the 2 number 2s. Then we have at pick 14, the Colts going Colston Loveland. We'll see what happens with Jelani Woods, because I was a big fan of Jelani Woods. But Colston Loveland is a monster. Granted, I don't really understand what role he'd play in this offense. He played a lot of slot and boundary receiver. He's pretty much a big receiver last year, because A.J. Barner took a lot of the inline reps. So I don't really know what the role would be for him, because you have Downs, you have A.D. Mitchell, you have Alec Pierce, and obviously Michael Pittman Jr. I don't see a role for him in that receiver mold that he was in last year that I loved him in. But we'll see. He's not a bad blocker, and he's a little bit on the smaller side at sub 250, but he is a solid blocker. Not a good blocker, not a great blocker, but a solid blocker. I just don't know if that's worth pick 14. We're talking about Brock Bowers being around this value. We don't have that in this class. I do love Mitchell Evans. I do think he can get remotely up there, but to be fair, I had Brock Bowers, I think, in my top 5. So I was a big fan of Brock. Regardless, at pick 15, the Jaguars go Emory Jones Jr. They do have a couple of tackles that are coming up on contract. I think Cam Robinson as well as Walker Little are going to be up for contract. My memory is serving me correctly. Emory Jones, he's going to be the right tackle. So, I think Anton should be moving back to left. I don't know why they put him. Well, I know why they put him on the right. But he did play a game of right tackle in his final year there at Oklahoma. If you move Anton to his natural left and have Emory Jones at the right, I think that's going to be baller. Emory Jones at worst is going to be an elite tier guard. I think he's a starting quality tackle as well. So even though I think corner should be the position you target for the Jaguars, I am not going to shame him for going after offensive tackle. Then we have Cleveland Browns going Abdul Carter. Abdul is just not good enough for me to be a starting edge rusher just yet. I think that he's probably in my 50s at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, you guys are getting spoilers here. Oh, he's at number 49, so close to 50. And that's with me being very, very, very optimistic of him being an edge rusher. It's very tough to transition from being a pure linebacker to going into a full-time edge role, but I did think that was his strength. It was zone coverage and being an edge rusher. So we'll see what happens there. But I don't think that Cleveland needs to spend it on Abdul. I'd rather spend it on Nick Scourton, who also fits exactly what they're looking for, that Isaiah McGuire build. So at pick 17, the Bears go Mikael Williams. Dude needs to develop a lot more, but very explosive for 265. He moves as an athlete like he's 245. The problem is he also has the physical presence of a 245 pounder. He doesn't act and control the game with 265 pounds. I do think that that's something you could develop in time, but it's very difficult to develop. I have been a big fan of Mikal. He was in my top 10 starting out the year. That's where I was projecting him to be. He's not there, but I do see the upside for him to get there. If he learns to just polish up his game a bit more, apply himself equally every play, like there's a big role for Mikal Williams in the future. I just don't think at the moment I feel comfortable projecting him over only 1 year for him to develop into a first round pick. But I have a sense that he will be returning to school and he will be a top 15 player maybe in 2026. That's just a hot take. I mean, again, we're over a year out from, or we're a little bit under a year out from even knowing whether that's the case. But, you know, it's just something deep down. When I watch this game, there's just so much to work on. And I know that that ceiling is there. And Georgia's a great place, especially with NIL, that you're able to take your time and develop into the player you're supposed to be. Chargers then go after Evan Stewart at 18. It's another slot guy for me. I think Ladd McConkey should stay in the slot, personally. And Evan Stewart, to me, was a slant merchant. He did not grade out well, unfortunately, at all. But Evan Stewart, it's not a bad player. It's just I think he's very, very one-dimensional. He doesn't have good size. Like, I do think that he's being a little bit overrated. Ladd McConkey was far superior, and I think he should stay in the slot. If you want to go after a boundary weapon, I mean, there's some in this class, but if you want to go after a player like Evan Stewart, go after Isaiah Bond. That dude's a monster. And again, I want to have Texas bias. I'm still SMU at heart, but I mean, Isaiah Bond, holy crap. I mean, he was someone who kept popping off to me, talking about Will Johnson popping off. He's someone who I ended up raising up my board, Isaiah Bond. So next video, you'll be seeing that, because of how I saw how he played versus different defensive backs. I didn't even know it was him. I was just like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, oh, crap, it's Isaiah Bond. But at 19, the Rams go Connor Wigman. He's a quarterback I always take first at this point. The guy who has the highest ceiling, but right now he does have a relatively lower floor. In the 80 yards between his end zone and the other team's red zone, he does a phenomenal job, in my opinion. He has solid mobility. It's not like, again, you're not talking about Lamar Jackson here, but really good arm, some unbelievable jaw-dropping throws. The moment he's in the red zone, though, I can tell he does not process nearly as well. He's young. He needs more time to develop that, but I easily can see Connor Wigman being a superstar on the Rams. So I don't know if the Rams are going to be at 19. I think they'll be actually a lot lower than that in terms of being closer to the Super Bowl in terms of their pick. So I usually say a higher pick is in closer to 1. It's a weird spot. He'll be lower on this list, like in the 20s. But Connor Wigman, fantastic. If the Rams can land him, I think that he'll end up being a superstar. Then you got the Jets going Riley Leonard. Talk about like a super high floor guy who just didn't get to prove himself at Duke. I don't even like Duke players. I mean, there you go. You got some anti-bias right there. Like, I just have not on record really liked Duke players on average. And Riley Leonard's somebody where I was hearing first round rumors of him last year. There's first round rumors of him this year, and I shut him down, right? The more I dug into Riley Leonard, do I think he's a first rounder? No. Like, I still think he's a fringe starter. But I also think that Duke really handicapped his ability to be himself. Like, he had really good mobility. He actually has some high-level throws on his tape. I do think that he has some of those boneheaded mistakes in there, but he's somebody that I think in a proper offense, a la Notre Dame, he could really shine. So this year, he's somebody who I'm going to be a lot more optimistic about. I think Riley Leonard could be definitely worth a first-round pick. At the moment, he is not, but I do think he's going to end up being that guy. At pick number 21, the Dolphins go Dayon Walker. It's very surprising to see Dayon all the way down here. I think that he needs to lower his pad level. I talk about this every time. There's plenty of videos out on it that are on my Twitter even. He stands straight up, and he's 6'6". Like, you don't have a low center of gravity, even if you're 348. He's a freak of nature. He just needs to polish up so much more. This is a perfect fit, though. It is. So I'm concerned about the fact that he doesn't know how to stay low, because NFL offensive linemen are better than college. Like, you're not going to win if you're on your ass. So those are my concerns with Dayon. That's why he's a bit lower on my board right now. But the potential, the ceiling is sky high. I mean, you see his best reps and you're like, this guy is a Dexter Lawrence type. But the chances are just so low if he does not learn to lower that pad level. 22, the Falcons go JT Tuimoloau, edge rusher out of The Ohio State University. JT still needs to develop a bit more. I think Zach Harrison is going to be someone who I trust equally as much as JT in his rookie year, and they have similar physical profile. I think JT has a higher ceiling than Zach Harrison. I like him more than Zach Harrison, but I just don't think JT is the first at the moment. And Nick Scourton's on the board. If that's the selection, I'm obviously in full support. No shit, he's my number 3 player in the draft. Then we have Jonah Savigny going to the Texans, right tackle at Arizona. I don't know if they're moving him to guard. Like, I've seen him listed as a center. I've seen him listed as an offensive tackle. Pretty sure Arizona's site says offensive tackle. God only knows. I mean, I don't really understand. So I think they're saying one of the best right tackles in college and then move him inside. So, okay, that's respectable because I do think he did look a little bit like a fish out of water versus Leontu Latu. And I mean, a lot of people did. But Jonah Savigny, he has a lot of the physical upside that you're looking for, really good anchor as well. I'm surprised I didn't think of him as a potential guard because I'm the sucker for putting tackles at guard. But that was just not something I saw. I don't really know if the Texans need to spend that, but I will see. I will watch Jonah Savigny in time and then see if that's worth it. But I just don't know if there's that big of a need for a guard for the Texans. I mean, I could see it, but I do think a boundary corner too, with the amount of guys they just try to continue plugging there, is probably a bigger issue. Then we got Tyleik Williams here for the Green Bay Packers. This is a team that has so much depth everywhere that you can just go after best player available. To me, that's not Tyleik, but still a really, really, really good player. Defensive tier 2 for me. Then we got the Bengals going, what do you know? Isaiah Bond. He can play on the outside as well. It's just a totally different role from T. Higgins, and you're going to be just going speed, speed, speed. Like, you got Jermaine Burton, Jamar Chase, and Isaiah Bond. That's a lot of speed. I don't know if that's going to work, but at 25, I'm not gonna crucify you for that. 26, you got the Bills going Nick Scourton. Well, I mean, you guys know exactly what I think based on my board there, but the Bills do need to get a contingency plan for a true edge one. That is a far from bad selection. You got the Cowboys going Quinshon Judkins. I ended up selecting him in my most recent mock draft for the Cowboys. Yes, we are back to taking running backs in the first round. There's some really good ones in this draft. Quinshon brings the right balance to the scat back approach in that RBBC. They're bringing in Ezekiel Elliott because they see that they need to fill that role. Quinshon Judkins fills in the Ezekiel Elliott role perfectly. He has a little bit more of an athletic cap on him than rookie Ezekiel Elliott, but you're talking about like Zeke right now, you're getting a much more upgraded version of that with Quinshon Judkins, so it's going to be a perfect system fit, and I think it'll work very, very well. At pick 28, the Eagles go Malachi Starks. You see where he is on my board. I think he's phenomenal. I do think he could even be a slot. I personally would put, I know there's the Ku Klux Clamps going on there with, Ed Reed Blankenship as well as Cooper DeJean. I would love those dudes to be the safeties. I personally would love that and put Malachi Starks to slot corner. That's my dream right there. Because Malachi is a baller in both the slot as well as being a free safety. He can be a deep safety if you want him to, but Malachi does have some top speed limitation, in my opinion. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but in terms of pure coverage, it's hard to get better than this guy. So you'll see that video coming out soon, but this is somebody who is elite in zone coverage. Like, I'm not going to over-explain it because that takes away from the actual in-depth analysis that I want to do for you guys first time on that video. Then we got 29, the Ravens going Tyler Booker. I mean, he's my number 5 player in the class. It's phenomenal. They do need some help on the interior of the offensive line. And Tyler Booker could even be an offensive tackle, in my opinion, if need be. This dude is an absolute freak show. Highest floor probably out of almost anybody in the class except probably Will Johnson. But, just somebody that is almost, like, flawless. Not the most exciting player in the world, but, right up there with being a blue chip player right away. And, I mean, he's just a guard. Like, that's just what he is. Like, he's just a really, really good guard. At pick 30, you got Emeka Egbuka going to the Lions. Got to see him a full year healthy. Last year, he was definitely not himself. And right now, his grade reflects what he was last year. But Emeka, if he's back to what he can be, and if he can be a true X in an offense, a true number 1, even though you don't need to be with ARSB, but if you can fit that role, then I think it works for the Lions. I want someone who is going to be more that physical enforcer. You got the deep threat. You got the nice separator on the inside with ARSB. Now let's get Emeka Egbuka there. It's going to be more that physical presence. I just think he's been pretty slot specific recently. We will see what happens when he's healthy and when he doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. Chiefs go Anthony Belton at 31. I think he's a guard. I really do. I mean, I'm I just really thought that he has really good physicality to his game, and it's just his hands are just garbo. I do think I love the love for Anthony Belton because he was far higher than I expected, but there's just some key flaws that I ended up talking about in my tackles video that I do think potentially limits him as an offensive tackle in the NFL. But he's a fun player. He's a fun player to watch, and love the fact that he's mentioned in this. Then we got Johnny Cornelius at 32 to the Niners. I think, he's a right tackle because the left tackle was Josh Connerly. But right tackle, perfect fit, by the way. One of the smartest tackles you'll see. Very underwhelming in terms of if you want excitement, but he's just a really consistent, really solid offensive tackle. And I think that's what the Niners need. You don't need flash. You don't. You just need someone to do their damn job, and that's exactly what Johnny Cornelius will do. So I am a fan of a Johnny. I think he brings enough to the game to be able to last as, especially on the Niners, as an upgraded right tackle for him. I do want to give a shout out to Denzel Burke. I think he's phenomenal. Literally the definition of just consistent on every level. And then Walter Nolan's a fun one. He's just 290. It's a weird spot to be in. And he plays like he plays with the athleticism of 260 and looks and has a physicality of a 310, which is kind of ideal. But physics are physics. 290 is 290. I just don't know if I can trust Walter being consistent enough at the next level. But shout out to Johnny Cornelius. I wouldn't put him in the first round, but I do think that's actually a really good selection for San Francisco. That's going to be the video, though. Unfortunately, there's not a second round, but I think fortunately for you guys listening to me yap all day, there's not a second round. Thank you so much for watching. Love y'all. See you on the far side.